3 days before my daughter's wedding, I overheard her fiancé, Gareth, call her that whale in a dress. He laughed, bragging about marrying her only for her inheritance, planning to divorce her later. He dismissed me as old and trusting. I stood silently, but a fire ignited within me. Now, he's about to face a mother who has nothing left to lose. Follow my story, like and share, and tell me where you're listening from. The sun was a warm benediction on my face as I drove, a light breeze ruffling the few stray hairs that had escaped my careful bun. My heart, usually a steady drum, was a joyful symphony today. 3 days, just 3 days until my beautiful Chloe, my only daughter, would walk down the aisle. At 64, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. A mother's profound happiness in seeing her child embark on a new chapter. Chloe had found Gareth, a man who, at least to my discerning eye, seemed kind, attentive, and utterly devoted to her. He had charmed not only Chloe but also me, winning my quiet approval with his seemingly genuine affection and respectable demeanor. Their love story felt like a fairy tale, and I, Eleanor, was living the dream of a mother seeing her daughter truly happy. My car, meticulously cleaned for the occasion, hummed along the winding path to the Riverside Country Club. The elegant venue, nestled amidst rolling green hills and manicured gardens, was a picture of serene anticipation. Today's mission was simple: drop off the final floral arrangements for the rehearsal dinner, a task I had insisted on handling myself. The smell of fresh lilies and roses filled the car, a fragrant promise of the beauty to come. I imagined Chloe's radiant smile as she saw them, her eyes sparkling with the innocent joy of a bride-to-be. She had been absolutely glowing these past few months, a luminescence that had warmed my very soul. As I neared the cluster of elegant cottages designated as bridal suites, a cacophony of loud, boisterous laughter cut through the otherwise peaceful afternoon. Male voices, full of a raw, almost arrogant mirth, echoed from one of the open doors. My initial thought was one of amusement, Gareth and his groomsmen, no doubt, enjoying their bachelor's freedom for one of the last times. I could hear Gareth's distinctive laugh, a hearty, unrestrained sound that I had come to associate with his easygoing nature. A smile touched my lips. I was about to call out, perhaps offer a playful jab about their rowdiness, when a particular set of words sliced through the air, sharp and unyielding, stopping me dead in my tracks. "I can't believe I'm marrying that whale in a dress," Gareth's voice drawled, heavy with disdain and an unsettling lack of irony. The words hung in the air, a vile cloud poisoning the sweet scent of the flowers in my hands. A fresh wave of cruel laughter erupted from his friends, a symphony of derision that seemed to mock the very ground I stood on. My stomach lurched violently, a cold, sickening coil tightening within me. My hands, which moments before had cradled delicate blooms, now felt clumsy, suddenly unable to comprehend the simple act of holding. The vibrant colors of the lilies blurred before my eyes, replaced by a dark, swirling void. Every fiber of my being screamed in protest, rejecting the reality of what I had just heard. It couldn't be Gareth, not my Gareth. "Then," he continued, his voice dropping slightly, but still loud enough to pierce the thin veil of the open window, "her mom's loaded, and Chloe is going to inherit everything, my ticket to freedom." The casual cruelty of his tone sent a shiver down my spine. This was not a joke, not a moment of youthful indiscretion. This was a calculated pronouncement, a declaration of intent as cold and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. He wasn't marrying Chloe for love. He was marrying her for what she represented: a fortune. "I'll play the loving husband for a while," he continued, a smirk evident in his voice even though I couldn't see his face. Then, poof, divorce. And I'm set for life. His friends roared with approval, a chorus of vultures circling their prey. The image of the loving, attentive Gareth shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces, leaving behind a monster I didn't recognize. The man I had welcomed into my home, shared meals with, and allowed to capture my daughter's heart, was a predator, a wolf in sheep's clothing, meticulously planning his devious hunt, and then, the final, dismissive blow. As for Eleanor, she's old and trusting. She'll sign over anything I need her to. My name, uttered with such contempt, felt like a physical assault. He saw me not as a mother, not as an individual, but as a convenient accessory to his scheme, a gullible old woman to be manipulated and discarded. The air grew thick around me, suffocating me with its stench of betrayal. My head spun, a nauseating cocktail of shock, anger, and profound sadness. My legs felt like jelly, threatening to give way beneath me, but some primal instinct kept me rooted to the spot, listening, absorbing every horrifying word. My mind, racing through the fog of disbelief, conjured Chloe's face. Her beautiful, innocent face, alight with happiness, completely unaware of the venomous deception lurking beneath the surface of her impending marriage. My heart ached for her, a deep, guttural pain that threatened to consume me. How could I have been so foolishly blind? How could I have missed the subtle red flags that, in this moment of brutal clarity, suddenly unfurled themselves like banners of warning? Gareth's occasional hurried glances at my home's valuation papers, the way his eyes lingered on Chloe's designer accessories, the almost too smooth answers he gave about his own family's finances. I had dismissed them all as quirks of a young man, chalking them up to nerves or simple curiosity. Now, they were glaring beacons of his true character. I remained frozen, a statue of grief and dawning rage, until the laughter finally subsided, and I heard the distant rumble of car engines as they drove away. The silence that followed was heavy, echoing with the ghosts of Gareth's words. My legs, though still trembling, somehow found the strength to move. I stumbled back to my car, the basket of flowers forgotten on the passenger seat, their vibrant beauty now a grotesque parody of my shattered dreams. The sun still shone, the birds still sang, but the world had irrevocably darkened around me. As I drove away from the country club, the image of Chloe's joyful face burning in my mind, a profound transformation began to take hold. The gentle, trusting mother of the bride was gone. In her place, a new resolve began to solidify, hard and unyielding as steel. The wedding, once a symbol of joyous union, had become a ticking clock, a deadline for action. 3 days. 3 days to dismantle a predator's scheme. I wasn't just Eleanor anymore, a woman who baked cookies and tended her garden. I had become something else entirely. I had become a woman with a mission, and absolutely nothing left to lose. The night was a torment. Gareth's words, sharp and venomous, echoed in the silent confines of my bedroom. That wail in a dress. Her mom's loaded. Sign over anything I need. Each phrase was a fresh stab, twisting the knife of betrayal deeper into my heart. Sleep was an impossible luxury, stolen by the relentless replay of his cruel admissions. My mind raced, a furious, chaotic torrent of disbelief, anger, and a terrifying dread for Chloe. How could I have been so blind? How could the man I had welcomed into my family, the man who was to marry my daughter in just 3 days, be such a monstrous deceiver? The image of Chloe's innocent, hopeful face flashed before my eyes, igniting a fierce, protective fire within me that burned away any lingering vestiges of doubt or despair. I had to act, and I had to act now. The first rays of dawn found me sitting bolt upright in bed, eyes wide open, fueled by a grim resolve. The gentle Eleanor, who cherished her quiet mornings and predictable routine, was gone. In her place was a woman driven by a singular, burning purpose. My library job, a sanctuary of order and calm, felt impossibly distant and irrelevant. With a quick, firm decision, I called in sick, my voice surprisingly steady as I explained a sudden, severe migraine. My real headache was far more insidious, a systemic poison threatening to destroy my daughter's future. My first foray into Gareth's hidden world began with his social media. As someone more accustomed to cataloging books than navigating digital networks, it was a daunting task. His personal profiles were, predictably, set to private, a digital fortress designed to conceal his true life. But even fortresses have weak points. I scoured his public profiles, then moved to those of his friends, painstakingly sifting through tagged photos and public posts. It was like piecing together a vast, unsettling jigsaw puzzle. The more I clicked, the more his carefully constructed facade began to crumble. What I found made my blood run cold. There were multiple intimate photos of Gareth with other women, not just one, but a succession of different faces, spanning recent months. Each image was a fresh wound, a visual confirmation of his depravity. He was a chameleon, effortlessly adapting his persona to suit his predatory needs. One particularly damning photograph, dated just 3 weeks ago, stood out like a grotesque beacon. It showed Gareth, looking undeniably smitten, holding hands with a striking brunette. The caption beneath it, posted by the woman herself, read, "Another perfect evening with my lady." My heart constricted. 3 weeks. 3 weeks before he was to stand at the altar with my daughter, he was openly declaring his affection for another woman. The brazenness was breathtaking, a testament to his utter disregard for Chloe and for truth. The digital trail didn't end there. I shifted my focus, searching for Gareth's professional life. My fingers, surprisingly agile for my age, typed his name into LinkedIn. His profile, once a source of comfort as it spoke of his supposed ambition and success, now revealed a different, more troubling truth. It showed his previous company, a tech startup, had been sold off months ago. Digging deeper, I found news articles detailing massive layoffs that had followed the acquisition. Gareth's name wasn't mentioned, but the timeline was clear. He had been out of a stable job for nearly 6 months, well before his engagement to Chloe. This explained so much. His expensive suits, the new luxury car he drove, the lavish gifts he'd given Chloe. They were all a front. He was unemployed, or at least without the kind of income that would support his ostentatious lifestyle. The pieces clicked into place, forming a chilling picture of calculated opportunism. He wasn't just cheating, he was financially bankrupt and emotionally bankrupt, preying on Chloe's kindness and my family's wealth. Armed with this new knowledge, I knew I needed more than just digital breadcrumbs. I needed concrete, undeniable evidence. I decided my next step was to drive by his luxury apartment complex, the address I had discreetly acquired from one of his wedding invitations. The building was sleek, modern, undeniably upscale, a stark contrast to his apparent lack of employment. My stomach churned with a mixture of dread and grim determination as I parked my car a discreet distance away, adopting the patience of a seasoned stakeout agent. It wasn't long before I saw him. Gareth emerged from the building, looking relaxed and casually elegant, his arms slung around the same brunette from the damning social media photo. Her hair was a rich, glossy cascade, and her smile, as she looked up at him, was genuine, full of an easy intimacy that spoke volumes. My heart twisted with a fresh wave of nausea. This was the woman, Lauren, as I now knew her name to be from her social media profile. As they chatted, she casually reached into her purse, pulled out a set of keys, and opened a mailbox in the complex's communal bank. That simple, mundane action spoke volumes. She lived here, with him. I followed them, maintaining a careful distance, my old sedan blending into the traffic as best it could. They drove to an upscale fitness center, the kind with gleaming equipment and personal trainers. Inside, through the expansive glass windows, I watched them work out together, laughing, sharing intimate glances, their bodies close as they spotted each other on machines. It was a scene of comfortable, everyday domesticity, a stark and cruel contrast to the excited, nervous bride my daughter was preparing to be. Every shared smile, every casual touch, was a fresh dagger to my protective mother's heart. After their workout, they walked hand in hand to a trendy coffee shop, settling into a cozy corner booth. Their conversation flowed animatedly, their faces alight with shared jokes and easy affection. He held her hand across the table, his thumb stroking her knuckles in a gesture of profound tenderness. This wasn't just a fleeting affair, a moment of weakness. This was a completely separate life, meticulously constructed and maintained, entirely parallel to the one he was so cruelly preparing to foist upon Chloe. He was not just cheating, he was living a double life, a deceit so profound it chilled me to the bone. The realization settled over me, heavy and cold. I had enough circumstantial evidence to shatter a lesser man. But Gareth was cunning. He would deny everything, spin tales, gaslight Chloe. I needed irrefutable proof, concrete evidence that no amount of charming lies could dismantle. I needed something legally sound, something that would leave him no room for escape. As I drove home, my decision solidified. The time for amateur sleuthing was over. I needed professionals. Reaching for my phone, I began to search for local private investigators, my fingers trembling slightly, but my resolve burning brighter than ever. The cost would be considerable, but it was an investment in my daughter's future, a shield against the venomous lies of a predator. Protecting Chloe was now my sole purpose, my unwavering mission, no matter the personal cost. The world blurred around me for the next few hours after leaving the country club. My mind, usually so clear and organized, was a tempest of rage and fear. I needed help, professional help. My neighbor, a retired police officer named Stan, had often spoken of a former colleague, Detective Vance, a private investigator known for his discretion and thoroughness. With trembling hands, I found the number Stan had given me years ago and made the call. It was late, but the urgency in my voice must have conveyed the gravity of the situation. Detective Vance agreed to meet me first thing in the morning. The detective's office was a modest, no-frills affair, smelling faintly of stale coffee and old paper. Detective Vance himself was a man in his late 50s, with a weathered face that spoke of years of witnessing human folly. Yet his eyes were remarkably kind, full of an almost paternal concern. I poured out my story, the words tumbling out in a torrent of anguish and indignation. He listened patiently, his expression unwavering, occasionally jotting notes in a small spiral-bound pad. When I finished, a heavy silence filled the room. He leaned forward, his gaze direct and piercing. "Mrs. Davies," he began, his voice a low rumble, "I need to ask you something important. Are you truly prepared for what we might find? Sometimes the truth, no matter how much you seek it, is worse than the darkest suspicions." His words were a sobering caution, a premonition of deeper horrors. I met his gaze, my own eyes burning with a fierce, unwavering resolve. "Detective Vance," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Whatever it is, I need to know. We need to stop him." There was no hesitation, no doubt. The gentle mother I once was had been replaced by a warrior, ready to face any truth, no matter how ugly, to protect my child. 3 days later, the phone rang, its sudden jolt making me jump. It was Detective Vance. The wedding was now just hours away, the rehearsal dinner tonight. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Mrs. Davies," he began, his voice grave, "I have a preliminary report for you. It's extensive." He didn't mince words. The woman I had seen Gareth with, the beautiful brunette, Lauren Miller, was not merely his girlfriend. She is his common-law wife, Mrs. Davies. They've been together for 4 years. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. 4 years. My daughter's entire relationship with Gareth had been a cruel farce, a carefully constructed illusion built upon the ruins of another woman's life. And the horror didn't stop there. Detective Vance went on to explain that Lauren, sweet, unsuspecting Lauren, believed she was Gareth's only partner. She was completely oblivious to his monstrous deception, just as Chloe had been. The depth of Gareth's duplicity was truly staggering, but the revelations continued, each one more shocking than the last. "And it's not just Lauren, Mrs. Davies," he continued, his voice lowering with a note of disgust. "Our investigation has revealed that Mr. Gareth is actively involved with at least 3 other women simultaneously. Chloe is merely one more mark in his elaborate scheme." My blood ran cold. My daughter, my precious Chloe, was just another victim in his cynical game, a pawn in his manipulative empire. Detective Vance then laid out Gareth's system, a chilling blueprint of calculated predation. "He targets financially stable but emotionally vulnerable women," he explained, his tone clinical, detached. "He studies their schedules, their insecurities, their social circles. Then he creates a persona, a customized, charming facade, tailored specifically to appeal to each woman's needs and desires. It was a meticulously crafted psychological assault, a deliberate exploitation of trust and affection. He spoke of Gareth's history, a litany of broken hearts and empty bank accounts. There was a previous marriage, he revealed, that ended after Gareth systematically cleaned out his wife's entire savings, leaving her financially ruined and emotionally shattered. Another woman, desperate for his approval, lost her house after co-signing multiple loans for him, loans he, of course, never intended to repay. "It's always the same pattern, Mrs. Davies," Detective Vance concluded, his voice laced with a grim weariness. "He finds women with money, and often, unfortunately, low self-esteem, or a strong desire for companionship. Then he systematically drains their resources, leaving a trail of devastation behind him." The details were sickening. Lauren, the common-law wife, a dedicated nurse, was currently funding Gareth's luxurious lifestyle, unknowingly bankrolling his multiple relationships. He had spun tales of investment opportunities, of temporary financial setbacks, all designed to extract every last penny from her. The man was a parasite, a professional con artist, preying on the kindness and trust of others. Just when I thought I couldn't bear another revelation, Detective Vance delivered a final, chilling warning. "And, Mrs. Davies," he said, his voice dropping to an almost inaudible whisper, "I think he knows that you're suspicious." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean?" I managed to croak, my throat tight with dread. "We observed him," he explained, "driving by your house. Twice. Slowly. He may not know exactly what you know, or how you know it, but he's certainly aware that something is amiss." A cold sweat broke out on my brow. He knew. The wolf knew he was being watched. The stakes had just been raised exponentially. This wasn't just about protecting Chloe from a broken heart. It was about protecting her from a dangerous, manipulative individual who was now aware he was under scrutiny. My determination solidified into an unyielding resolve. The game had begun, and I was ready to play. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. The private investigator's call had left me reeling, grappling with the monstrous scope of Gareth's deception, and now, the chilling revelation that he knew I was watching. I had barely had time to process the information, let alone formulate a plan. It was 2 days before the wedding, and the doorbell chimed, a sound that usually brought me comfort. Today, it was a knell of dread. Through the peephole, I saw him, Gareth, standing on my porch, his face devoid of its usual affable mask. His posture was rigid, his jaw set, and his eyes, usually sparkling with feigned warmth, were cold, flat, and utterly devoid of emotion. The charm, the easy smile he always wore, was gone, replaced by something hard and menacing. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the frantic beating of my heart. My hands, still trembling from Detective Vance's call, curled into fists. This was it, the moment of truth. I slowly opened the door, a narrow gap at first, then wider, inviting him into the lion's den. "Gareth," I managed, my voice a strained whisper, though I tried to imbue it with a semblance of calm. The chill his presence evoked was palpable, a cold wave washing over me despite the warmth of the afternoon sun. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his eyes sweeping across my living room, lingering on the antique furniture, the framed family photographs, the very essence of my life. His gaze was calculating, appraising, not admiring. "Nice place, Eleanor," he finally said, his voice low, almost a purr, but devoid of any genuine compliment. "Must be worth a pretty penny. And so well maintained." It wasn't praise, it was an assessment, a valuation of his potential spoils. I closed the door behind him, turning to face him fully, my spine stiffening. "What do you want, Gareth?" I asked, cutting straight to the point, unwilling to engage in pleasantries. He turned, a faint, humorless smile playing on his lips. "I think you know what I want, Eleanor," he retorted, his eyes holding mine in a predatory stare. "The real question is, what do you want?" "I want Chloe to be happy," I said, my voice rising slightly. And safe. With someone who truly loves and respects her. He let out a short, harsh laugh that held no humor, just pure, cynical contempt. Love and respect? He scoffed. You really are old-fashioned, aren't you? What does that even mean anymore? The anger I had been holding at bay finally began to surface. It means not making her feel beautiful to her face, then calling her a whale, in a dress, behind her back. I spat, unable to keep the venom from my tone. His smile vanished. For a split second, a flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by a cold, hard mask. So, you were listening, he said, not as a question, but a statement of fact. Then, his eyes narrowed, and he dropped all pretense. Look, Eleanor, let's be realistic. Chloe isn't exactly a catch, is she? Overweight, insecure, and desperate for male attention. I'm doing her a favor, giving her the wedding, the husband, the illusion of happiness she so desperately craves. The words were delivered with a casual cruelty that made my blood boil. It was not just an insult, it was a psychological dismantling of my daughter. Laid bare and dissected for his own twisted gratification. He began to pace, slowly, deliberately, as if staking his claim to the very floorboards beneath his feet. As for what I want, he continued, gesturing expansively with his hand. It's simple. This house, for starters, quite valuable. Your husband's life insurance payout, which I know is substantial. And, of course, Chloe's inheritance, which, once we're married, will become communal property. He listed his benefits with the chilling precision of a financier outlining a portfolio, his eyes gleaming with avarice. You're not going to marry her, I asserted, my voice shaking with a newfound strength, fueled by the sheer audacity of his confession. He stopped pacing, turning to me with a slow, deliberate smile that sent shivers down my spine. Oh, but I am, Eleanor, he declared, his voice a silky whisper that was more menacing than a shout. And you, dear Eleanor, are going to ensure that nothing stands in my way. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum of apprehension. What could he possibly know? What leverage could he have? He seemed to read the question in my eyes. You see, I've been doing some digging of my own, he said, his smile widening into a predatory grin. About your little secret, your visits to Dr. Albright. The cancer diagnosis, Eleanor. The one you've been so careful to hide from dear Chloe for months. The world tilted. The air was sucked out of the room. My knees buckled, and I instinctively gripped the back of the sofa, my knuckles turning white. My secret, the terrifying burden I had carried alone, the diagnosis that was slowly but surely changing my future. He knew. How? How could he possibly know? He watched my reaction with a perverse satisfaction, enjoying the terror etched on my face. Imagine Chloe's devastation, he continued, his voice dripping with venom, when she learns her loving mother has been lying to her for months, keeping such a devastating secret. On her wedding day, perhaps? A little pre-wedding gift from Gareth. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. Think about it, Eleanor. You expose me. You tell Chloe your truth. And not only do you shatter her dreams, but you also force her to face your impending death, utterly alone, with no husband, no future, just the crushing weight of your illness and your deception. All because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. His words were a carefully calculated strike, aimed at my most vulnerable point. He was not just threatening to expose my illness, he was threatening to weaponize it, to twist it into a tool of destruction that would annihilate Chloe's happiness and leave her emotionally crippled. The depth of his calculated manipulation was truly horrifying. But amidst the terror, a new realization dawned. He wasn't just powerful and cruel. He was also desperate enough to use my illness, desperate enough to resort to such extreme emotional blackmail, and desperate men, I knew, could be outsmarted. Stay with me for this crucial turn in Eleanor's fight to save her daughter. If you're finding this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to not miss a single moment of what happens next. The silence in my home after Gareth's departure was thick, suffocating. His words, particularly the chilling revelation about my illness, echoed in my ears, a cruel symphony of blackmail. I paced my living room. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the only other sound, fear, cold and insidious, tried to grip me. But beneath it, a tiny flicker of insight began to glow. His desperation, his need to control me, to threaten me with such personal, devastating information, hinted at a weakness. If he truly had all the power, he wouldn't need to threaten. He would simply act. This thought, small but potent, was a lifeline in the stormy sea of my terror. He was cornered, and that meant I had leverage, however precarious. The next morning, Friday, dawned bright and deceptively cheerful. Today was the day of the rehearsal dinner. Tomorrow the wedding. My heart was a lead weight in my chest, heavy with the knowledge of what awaited Chloe, but I had to maintain the illusion of normalcy. Precisely at 9 o'clock, Gareth's sleek black car pulled into my driveway. He emerged, radiating his usual polished charm, and opened the passenger door for Chloe. She stepped out, a vision of radiant happiness in a flowing sundress, her face glowing with pre-wedding excitement. "Mom, good morning," she chirped, hugging me tightly. Her joy was infectious, yet it pierced my heart with a fresh wave of agony. How could I shatter this beautiful bubble of illusion? Gareth followed her in, his arm slung casually around her waist, but his eyes, when they met mine, were cold and calculating. There was a hidden threat in his carefully constructed smile, a silent reminder of his leverage. "Good morning, Eleanor," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I brought your favorite Danish, apple and almond, right? I remember you mentioning it." He held out a small bakery box. It was a gesture of feigned affection, a subtle demonstration of his knowledge of my habits, a twisted display of how deeply he had infiltrated my life. We sat at my kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken tension, at least for me. Chloe chattered excitedly about last-minute wedding details, blissfully unaware of the psychological war being waged inches from her. She noticed my quietness, my slightly distant demeanor. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing with concern. "You seem a little subdued." Before I could formulate a response, Gareth smoothly interjected, laying a comforting hand on her arm. "It's just pre-wedding emotions, sweetheart," he said, his voice laced with tender reassurance. "Eleanor's probably feeling a mix of joy and a touch of melancholy, knowing her little girl is all grown up. It's completely normal." He shot me a fleeting, triumphant glance, a silent warning against contradiction. I forced a weak smile, grateful for his quick save, even as I despised him for it. His manipulation was so seamless, so natural. It was terrifying. As we finished breakfast, Gareth leaned back in his chair, taking a sip of his coffee. "You know, Eleanor," he began, his tone thoughtful, almost philosophical. "Chloe and I have been talking a lot about our future, building our own life, our own family unit. And we both agree that for a strong marriage, it's important to establish healthy boundaries." My internal alarm bells screamed. I knew where this was going. He was laying the groundwork, subtly, meticulously, to isolate Chloe from her support system. "We love you. Of course, Eleanor," he continued, turning back to me, his voice oozing sincerity. "But for the first year or so, we think it's best to prioritize our relationship. So, fewer impromptu family dinners, maybe scheduled holiday visits, just to give us space to truly build our foundation." Chloe, ever trusting, ever eager to please, chimed in. "Yes, it's like, we want to be independent, Mom. Like, grow up and have our own traditions. Don't you think that's mature and healthy?" She looked at me, her eyes bright with hopeful anticipation. I managed to force another smile, the muscles in my face aching with the effort. "Of course, darling," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to be happy and independent. That's all any mother wants." The words felt like ash in my mouth. Gareth pressed on, emboldened by Chloe's agreement, and my feigned acquiescence. And that extends to bigger decisions too, he added, his gaze fixed on mine, a subtle warning in his eyes. Financial decisions, career choices, anything that affects our household. It's crucial we make those as a unit, without necessarily needing to consult extended family. Total autonomy, you know? My heart sank. This wasn't just about family dinners. This was about severing Chloe's ties, isolating her from anyone who might offer counsel or scrutiny, making her entirely dependent on him. This was the prelude to controlling her assets, her inheritance, everything. He was a master puppeteer, and Chloe was his unwitting marionette. As they finally prepared to leave, Chloe heading to the car to retrieve something, Gareth paused by the doorway, his hand on the knob. He leaned in, his voice a low, chilling murmur, meant only for my ears. "Just a final reminder, Eleanor," he whispered, his eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. "If you try anything tomorrow, anything at all, during the ceremony, at the reception, any little trick to derail my plans, I will tell her. I will tell Chloe about your terminal diagnosis, and I will do it in the cruelest, most public way possible. And then, you can watch her fall apart, completely alone, because you were too selfish to let her have her happy day." A wave of nausea washed over me. He took pleasure in this. In the psychological torture, in the calculated pain. He wasn't just planning to isolate Chloe. He was planning to systematically dismantle her emotional well-being, leaving her vulnerable and utterly reliant on him. He reveled in the power he held over me, over us. I watched Chloe, her back to us, happily rummaging in the car, her bright, trusting smile, a beacon of innocence in the face of such monstrous evil. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The fear, the indecision, the paralysis. It all evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Gareth had underestimated me. He thought he had me trapped, silenced by his threats. But he had just given me a reason to fight even harder. I was done playing defense, done being his terrified pawn. It was time to go on the attack. The clock on my kitchen wall seemed to mock me, its steady tick-tock counting down the precious hours. 8 hours. That's all I had until the rehearsal dinner. The perfect stage for Gareth's final act of manipulation. And, as I now resolved, the venue for his undoing. The fear still gnawed at me, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was now tempered by a fierce, driving purpose. The time for defense was over. It was time to go on the attack. My first call was to Detective Vance. His voice, when he answered, was as calm as ever, a stark contrast to the hurricane raging within me. "Detective," I began, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. "I need everything you have on Gareth. Every single detail, every piece of evidence, and I need it today." Before the rehearsal dinner, there was a pause on the other end. "Mrs. Davies," he said, his tone cautionary. "You need to understand, a cornered man can be dangerous, especially one like Gareth. Are you sure you want to escalate things?" "The wedding is tomorrow, Detective," I replied, the urgency in my voice undeniable. "If I don't act tonight, it will be too late. My daughter will be legally bound to him. There will be no coming back from that." He understood. He promised to compile everything and have it delivered to me within the next few hours. My second call was the hardest, a plunge into the unknown. I found Lauren Miller's number through Detective Vance's preliminary report. My finger hovered over the call button, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. This woman was another victim, an unwitting accomplice in Gareth's web of deceit. How would she react? Would she believe me? I dialed. The phone rang 3 times before a pleasant, slightly wary voice answered. "Hello? Is this Lauren Miller?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, it is. Who's this?" "My name is Eleanor Davies. I'm calling about Gareth," I said, going straight for the jugular. There was a moment of silence, then a confused, almost defensive tone. "Gareth? What about him? Blaine and I are together. We live together. Who are you? The name Blaine. She called him Blaine. Another layer of his monstrous deceit. My stomach churned. I took a deep breath. Lauren, I know this is going to be difficult to hear, but Gareth is getting married tomorrow. To my daughter, Chloe. The silence that followed was deafening, stretching taut with shock and disbelief. Then, a sharp gasp, followed by a choked sound. What? No, that's impossible. He wouldn't. We're getting a house next month. Her voice was laced with raw pain and utter bewilderment. I have proof, Lauren, I said, my voice softening slightly, recognizing her profound distress. I know this is a terrible shock. Would you be willing to meet me? There's a coffee shop not far from your apartment. In an hour? I gave her the address. A neutral, public place. Her shock slowly gave way to a simmering anger. An hour, she bit out, her voice tight with a newfound fury. I'll be there. The line went dead. I felt a pang of pity for her, but also a surge of relief. She would come. Another piece of Gareth's carefully constructed world was about to crumble. My third call was to Dr. Albright, my oncologist. The shame of having my illness exposed, and the terror that Gareth could use it so cruelly, had been a heavy weight. I needed to understand how he knew. Dr. Albright, I explained. My voice hushed. I believe my medical information has been compromised. Specifically, a man who knows I've been seeing you, and that I have a cancer diagnosis. He's threatening to use it against me. Dr. Albright listened intently, her voice kind and reassuring. Eleanor, I can assure you that our office maintains the strictest patient confidentiality. However, in cases of highly motivated individuals, sometimes information can be acquired through what we call social engineering. He may have picked up on subtle cues, overheard something, or perhaps even impersonated you or a family member over the phone, though we have protocols against that. Her explanation made sense. Gareth was a master manipulator. He'd probably pieced together snippets of information, twisted it, and used it against me. Then, she addressed the more crucial point, the one that had twisted my insides with fear. And Eleanor, she continued, I want to be absolutely clear. Your prognosis is cautiously optimistic, as we discussed. It is not terminal. You are responding well to treatment. This man has clearly twisted a limited truth to try and manipulate you. A wave of relief, cold and then warm, washed over me. Not terminal. Gareth had exaggerated, twisted, and weaponized a partial truth, turning it into a monstrous lie to control me. The anger flared anew, hotter and more righteous. He would pay for this. My final, and perhaps most crucial, call was to Miss Davies, the unflappable event coordinator at the Riverside Country Club. Miss Davies, I began, my voice carefully casual. I was hoping to add a small, personal touch to the rehearsal dinner tonight, during the cocktail hour, before we sit for dinner. I thought it would be lovely to have a brief presentation, just a few minutes, really, for family members to share some happy memories and well wishes for the happy couple. There was a slight pause. Mrs. Davies, that's a bit unusual for a rehearsal dinner, but if it's brief, I suppose we could accommodate. How long were you thinking? No more than 10 minutes, I assured her, my heart thumping. And it would involve some photographs. Would it be possible to set up a projection screen? Just a simple one. Of course, she said, her tone professional. I hung up the phone, a strange mix of terror and exhilarating resolve coursing through me. The stage was set. The evidence was being compiled. I was putting everything on the line, my reputation, my dignity, even Chloe's immediate happiness, but it was the only way. With every piece of the puzzle now in place, I prepared for the ultimate confrontation, knowing that tonight, Gareth's carefully constructed house of cards would come crashing down. The coffee shop bustled with the usual Friday afternoon crowd, a comforting hum of chatter and clinking ceramics. But for me, the world had narrowed to the small table where I sat, waiting. At precisely 2 p.m., Lauren Miller walked in. She was indeed beautiful, her dark hair, a striking contrast to her pale complexion. Her eyes, usually bright, were clouded with a mixture of confusion and raw hurt. Her hands, when she laid them on the table, trembled visibly. "Thank you for coming, Lauren," I said, my voice gentle. I could see the pain she was already carrying, and I knew the next few minutes would only deepen it. She nodded, her gaze wary. "Just tell me what's going on," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't waste time. I pulled out the carefully selected items from my bag. Chloe and Gareth's glossy engagement announcement, a handful of joyful party photos, and finally, one of the elegant wedding invitations, which featured Gareth's full name alongside Chloe's. I laid them on the table between us. Lauren stared, her eyes scanning each piece of evidence. Disbelief warred with dawning comprehension. Her face cycled through a series of emotions: shock, then profound hurt, and finally, a cold, simmering rage. "No," she breathed, pushing the invitation away as if it were contaminated. "No, this can't be real." 4 years, Eleanor. 4 years. We've been planning our future. I thought we were going to get married. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back with fierce determination. "I know," I said, my heart aching for her. "And it's not just you, Lauren." I then presented Detective Vance's initial findings. Printouts of his social media profiles, screenshots of intimate photos with other women, and a summary of his predatory patterns. I detailed the previous victims, the common threads of financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. Lauren absorbed it all, her initial shock giving way to a steely resolve. The color slowly returned to her face, not from health, but from a burning anger. She looked at me, her eyes hardened, stripped of their former vulnerability. "He's a monster," she stated, her voice low and firm. Then, her gaze met mine, clear and resolute. "What do you need me to do?" At 3 p.m., Detective Vance arrived at my house. He carried a thick folder, its contents a testament to Gareth's extensive web of deceit. He nodded gravely as I explained my meeting with Lauren. "Good," he said simply. "She's a key witness." He opened the folder, spreading out various documents on my dining table. "Here's the hard evidence," he began. "Financial records. Mr. Gareth isn't just unemployed. He's deeply in debt. Over $50,000 in credit card debt, several months behind on rent for his luxury apartment, which, incidentally, Lauren is paying for, and significant gambling losses." He pointed to a series of betting slips and bank statements. "He's in deep, Mrs. Davies. He needs a bigger score, and he needs it fast." His finger then tapped on a document detailing Chloe's substantial inheritance. The motive was laid bare, cold and undeniable. The weight of the evidence solidified my resolve. Gareth wasn't just a cad. He was a dangerous financial predator, desperate and cornered. At 5:30 p.m., I arrived at the Riverside Country Club. The valet took my car, and I walked towards the entrance, a nondescript tote bag clutched in my hand. Inside lay my laptop, a USB drive containing all the compiled evidence, and my carefully rehearsed presentation. The cocktail area, where the rehearsal dinner was to begin, was already bustling with guests. It was exquisitely decorated, the air filled with soft music and the murmur of happy conversations. Fairy lights twinkled around the elegant pillars, casting a magical glow. Chloe stood near the entrance, radiant in a shimmering blue dress, her face glowing with genuine happiness as she greeted arriving guests. My heart squeezed. It was a cruel irony that this beautiful setting, designed for joy, was about to become the backdrop for such a devastating truth. Gareth was by her side, working the room with his usual effortless charm, a glass of champagne in hand. He laughed, he complimented, he embodied the perfect fiancé. But now, I saw through it all. His smiles were calculated, his gestures theatrical. He was a master manipulator, performing for an unwitting audience. He caught my eye across the room, and for a fleeting moment, his confident smile wavered, replaced by a flicker of suspicion, a silent challenge in his eyes. The minute hand of the clock crept towards 6:15, p.m. My stomach churned, but my resolve held. Just then, the doors swung open again. Lauren entered, dressed simply but elegantly in a black dress, her face a mask of controlled composure. Her eyes, filled with a newfound steeliness, met mine across the crowded room. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. She was here. Taking a deep breath, I walked towards the small stage that Miss Davies, the event coordinator, had discreetly set up for my presentation. I took the microphone, the metallic coolness a stark contrast to the burning heat in my chest. I tapped it lightly, gathering everyone's attention. If I could have just a few minutes of your time. Everyone, I announced, my voice clear and surprisingly strong. I'd like to share some memories tonight. Some well wishes for Chloe and Gareth. Before we sit down to dinner, a ripple of pleasant expectation spread through the room. Guests turned, smiling, anticipating a heartwarming mother of the bride speech. Chloe beamed at me, her face alight with pride, but Gareth's eyes, fixed on me, narrowed, a cold suspicion hardening their depths. He knew. Or he suspected. As I moved to connect my laptop to the projector, the stage was set. The moment of truth had arrived, and Gareth's public downfall was now inevitable. The spotlight, provided by the projector, cast a stark circle on the screen as I connected my laptop. The air in the cocktail area hummed with an expectant silence, a stark contrast to the thundering rhythm of my own heart. I took a deep breath, met Chloe's beaming gaze, and clicked the first slide. A beautiful, conventional photo of Chloe and Gareth, smiling and arm in arm, filled the screen. It was taken during their engagement party, a picture of pure, unadulterated joy. A collective sigh of appreciation rippled through the guests. I picked up the microphone again, my voice surprisingly steady. They make a lovely couple, don't they? I said, my gaze sweeping across the room, lingering for a moment on Gareth, whose smile had become fixed. His eyes narrowed, searching for a hidden trap. So happy, so committed to each other. My finger moved to the trackpad. Click. The next image flashed onto the screen. It was the damning photograph from Gareth's social media. Gareth, undeniably himself, with his arm intimately draped around Lauren Miller, at a romantic, candlelit dinner. The caption, still visible, read, "Another perfect evening with my lady." A collective gasp, sharp and audible, sliced through the elegant room. The gentle murmur of conversation died instantly. All eyes, which moments before had been on the screen, now swiveled to Gareth, then to Chloe. Chloe's radiant face went bone white, her smile evaporating, replaced by a look of utter bewilderment and profound pain. She looked from the screen to Gareth, then back to the screen, as if trying to reconcile the two impossibly conflicting images. My voice, though still calm, now carried an edge of steel. But as I've recently learned, I continued, letting the words hang in the stunned silence, Gareth has, in fact, been devoted to several women simultaneously. A truly remarkable feat, wouldn't you agree? Another click. This time, the image was even more explicit. Gareth, shirtless, kissing a different woman. One of the others Detective Vance had identified. At a sun-drenched beach resort, palm trees swaying in the background. His arm was wrapped possessively around her waist, their bodies pressed together in an undeniable embrace. Chaos erupted. A furious wave of murmurs swept through the guests. Shocked whispers, indignant gasps, and outright exclamations filled the air. Chloe let out a small, wounded sound, a choked sob that tore at my heart. Her eyes, filled with tears, fixed on Gareth, who stood frozen for a second, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning fury. Then, he moved. Gareth's face contorted into a mask of pure rage, and he stormed towards me, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Eleanor, what the hell are you doing?" he roared, his voice cutting through the rising clamor. His hands clenched into fists, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might physically assault me. But before he could reach the stage, a figure stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. It was Lauren Miller, her composure unshakable, her eyes burning with a quiet, furious dignity. She stepped into the projector's light, her presence commanding. "My name is Lauren Miller," she announced, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the escalating chaos. "And I've been living with Gareth for the past 2 years." The room fell into a sudden, absolute silence. Every single person, including Gareth, seemed to freeze, mesmerized by this new, unexpected revelation. Chloe stood motionless, tears streaming down her pale cheeks, her world crumbling around her. Gareth, confronted by the living proof of his deceit, looked utterly out of control, his carefully constructed persona shattering into a million pieces. "This is insane!" Gareth shrieked, his voice cracking with desperation. He pointed a trembling finger at me, then at Lauren. "You're all listening to a sick woman. Eleanor is clearly having some kind of breakdown, and this is some crazy ex-girlfriend trying to ruin my life." His accusations were wild, baseless, but for a moment, the sheer force of his denial threatened to sway some of the confused guests. But Lauren was ready. Calmly, deliberately, she opened her own bag. From it, she pulled out a series of photographs. Images of their shared apartment, their furniture, mundane everyday scenes that screamed domesticity. Then, she produced a copy of their joint lease agreement, neatly folded. Finally, she scrolled through her phone, projecting a torrent of loving text messages from Gareth, spanning years, onto the screen. His sweet nothings, his declarations of love, his plans for their future, now scrolled across the screen for all to see. A damning testament to his duplicity. She turned to Chloe, her gaze filled with a profound sorrow. "I'm so sorry you're finding out this way, Chloe," she said, her voice filled with genuine regret. "I wish there had been another way." As Gareth stood, sputtering and red-faced, unable to counter the irrefutable evidence, another figure emerged from the back of the room. It was Detective Vance, his demeanor calm and authoritative. He held a thick manila folder in his hand. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his voice carrying the practiced authority of a law enforcement professional. "My name is Detective Vance, and I am a licensed private investigator." He presented his credentials, then turned his gaze to Gareth. "Mr. Gareth," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "My investigation into your activities over the past several years has uncovered a disturbing pattern of fraud, manipulation, and financial exploitation." He then proceeded to detail Gareth's extensive history. Slide by, carefully documented slide, credit reports riddled with debt, bank records showing unexplained transfers and massive gambling losses, and, most damning of all, notarized police complaints from other women, previous victims who had come forward, detailing how Gareth had swindled them out of their savings, their homes, their very futures. The sheer volume and damning nature of the evidence left no room for doubt, no space for denial. Gareth's elaborate facade, painstakingly built over years of deceit, completely shattered, exposed for the monstrous lie it was. The cocktail area had descended into a stunned silence as Detective Vance laid bare Gareth's egregious history. The air crackled with tension, thick with the weight of revelation and betrayal. All eyes were on Gareth, whose face was now a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. Suddenly, a choked whisper broke the stillness. "Stop!" It was Chloe, her voice trembling, barely audible. Then, a raw, anguished scream ripped from her throat. "Please, just stop!" All heads swiveled towards her. She stood, a solitary figure amidst the wreckage of her dreams. Tears streaming down her face, her beautiful blue dress now seeming like a shroud of sorrow. Her gaze, filled with a profound devastation, fell upon Gareth. Gareth, seeing his schemes fully exposed, his life unraveling before a room full of shocked onlookers, finally broke. His handsome face contorted into something ugly, vicious. The charming fiancé was gone, replaced by a snarling, cornered beast. "Fine!" he shrieked, his voice laced with bitter contempt. "You want the truth? I never loved you, Chloe. Never. Look at yourself. You're overweight, insecure, and desperate for attention. You think I would ever truly fall for someone like you? His words, venomous and cruel, struck Chloe like physical blows. He admitted he had stayed, not for her, but for her family's money, for the substantial inheritance he had so meticulously planned to claim. Our relationship was a joke, a means to an end, he snarled, glaring around the room as if daring anyone to contradict him. Chloe stumbled back a step, as if recoiling from a physical assault. The raw brutality of his words was meant to annihilate her, to leave her shattered and worthless. But something extraordinary happened. Through her tears, through the depths of her profound pain, an incredible strength began to emerge. Her eyes, though still wet, hardened, and her chin lifted. "Get out," she whispered, her voice surprisingly steady, considering the seismic shift in her world. Then, she raised her voice, a new resolve hardening her tone. "Get out of my life, Gareth. Get out of my home, out of this club, and if you ever come near me or my family again, I will have you arrested. Do you understand?" Gareth, momentarily stunned by her defiance, seemed to deflate. His power, the illusion of control he had held over us, was broken, but even in defeat, he couldn't resist one final, cruel jab. His eyes, burning with a malicious hatred, found mine. "And Eleanor?" he sneered, his voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper. "Enjoy your last few months. Terminal, isn't it? Such a shame your daughter will be alone when you go." Before he could utter another hateful word, 2 security guards, alerted by Miss Davies and Detective Vance, moved swiftly. They took Gareth by the arms, efficiently escorting him out of the room. He struggled, cursed, and threatened, but his words were impotent now, drowned out by the shame of his public exposure. The door swung shut behind him, and the room was plunged into an eerie quiet. All eyes, once again, turned to Chloe. She was trembling, but her gaze was no longer fixed on the door where Gareth had vanished. It was fixed on me, her mother, her eyes wide with a question that filled me with both dread and a profound, aching love. "Is it true, Mom?" she asked, her voice a raw whisper, still thick with tears. Are you dying?" The dreaded moment had arrived. The secret I had guarded so fiercely, now exposed in the most brutal way possible. I walked towards her, my legs feeling heavy, and took her trembling hands in mine. "Chloe, darling," I began, my voice choked with emotion. "I do have cancer. I was diagnosed a few months ago. I was so scared, so terrified of worrying you, of ruining your happiness with Gareth, that I kept it from you. But no, sweet girl, I am not dying. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. I'm responding well to treatment, and my prognosis is good." Gareth twisted the truth to manipulate me, to keep me silent. Chloe stared at me, her eyes searching my face, absorbing my words. Then, the tears came again, fresh and raw. But this time, they were different. These were not tears of betrayal from a fiancé, but tears of hurt and confusion from a daughter who felt shut out. She let out a silent sob, a deep, guttural sound that shook her whole body. Then, she threw her arms around me, burying her face in my shoulder. "Oh, Mom," she wept, her voice muffled against my dress. "I don't need protection from the hard truths, Mom. I need honesty. I need you." Around us, the remaining guests, observing this intensely personal moment, began to quietly filter out of the room, their murmurs soft, their eyes full of understanding. They knew the family needed privacy, needed time to heal. Soon, only Chloe, Lauren, Detective Vance, and I remained. Chloe pulled back from our embrace, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. She turned to Lauren, reaching out a hand. "Lauren," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "Thank you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for coming. You saved me from a terrible mistake." Lauren's eyes softened, a shared understanding passing between the 2 women who had been unknowingly entwined by a manipulative monster. "He hurt us both, Chloe," she replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "I'm just glad we could stop him." Detective Vance then stepped forward. I have enough evidence here to pursue criminal charges against Mr. Gareth for fraud and potentially other offenses, he stated, looking at Chloe. It's your decision, Chloe. We can proceed. Chloe paused, looking at the folder, then back at Lauren and me. She shook her head. No, she said, her voice firm. Not right now. I just want him out of our lives. I want to move forward, to put this trauma behind us. There would be no wedding tomorrow, no immediate charges, just a profound need for healing and peace. Over the following weeks and months, the scars began to heal. Eleanor and Chloe painstakingly rebuilt their relationship, brick by painful brick, on a foundation of absolute honesty and open communication. Chloe became an active participant in Eleanor's care, attending appointments, asking questions, her initial hurt slowly giving way to a deeper understanding and appreciation of her mother's strength. 2 years later, Eleanor received the news that she was in full remission, a triumphant victory over both cancer and the shadow of Gareth's deceit. And Chloe? She found love again, not in a whirlwind romance built on lies, but with a kind, steady man named Liam. He saw her for who she was, valuing her for her intelligence, her warmth, and her generous spirit, never once seeing a whale in a dress. Their wedding, planned with quiet joy and unwavering trust, would be free of secrets, built on a foundation of truth, and celebrated by a family made stronger by the storm they had weathered.